Hello, my name's Keith Rucker. Today I thought I'd do a little quick video, just kind of maybe doing a little product review, I guess you could say, on this Wells Index milling machine. I've had a couple of questions from people through the comments on YouTube, asking some questions about this and requesting some additional information. So I thought I'd just go through a few little things and tell you a little bit about this milling machine. I guess when you talk about a vertical milling machine, most people are most familiar with the Bridgeport brand or the many clones of the Bridgeports that are out there. That has kind of become the standard with vertical milling machines, and rightfully so. A Bridgeport is an absolutely wonderful machine. I used one for many years when I worked in the machine shop. That's the mill that I cut my teeth on. Several years ago, when I was in the market for buying a mill for my personal self, I was quite honestly looking for a Bridgeport. But I was a little bit disappointed because most of the Bridgeports out there, just because of their name Bridgeport, they seem to demand a little bit higher price, and I couldn't find anything that was close by. A friend of mine that lives up in North Georgia, just south of Chattanooga, actually had this Wells Index machine that was in his shop, and he was actually wanting to get rid of it just because he had another 2 milling machines. He said he didn't need two, and was actually downsizing and going one a little bit smaller to put into a basement shop. So he offered this Wells Index to me, and I was a little bit familiar with his machine. I'd had the opportunity to use it on a couple of occasions and really liked it, and so when the opportunity came up, we worked out a deal, and I jumped all over it anyway. I got this. So this Wells Index is model 847. This is my personal milling machine. I keep it out here at the museum because this is where I do most of my work at, and they've allowed me to bring a couple of my personal machines in here just so I'll have everything in one spot. But this is my personal milling machine. I've had it for a couple of years now, probably maybe a little over 2 years now. And I've been very happy with it. Comparing this to the Bridgeport, they are fairly similar machines in their operation and everything about them. One thing I do like about this machine, I guess, over the Bridgeport, and again, by no means throwing any stones at the Bridgeports because they're wonderful machines, but this one is just a little bit heavier built. In fact, it weighs in about 600 pounds more than the Bridgeport model of similar size or whatever. So it is just a little bit heavier, a little bit beefier, and I like having that little bit of extra heft to the machine. It just kind of helps dampen out some of the vibrations and stuff. Overall, as far as comparing the two, I don't know that I'd really say that this one is better than a Bridgeport or worse than a Bridgeport. They're very comparable to one another. When I did get this machine, it was pretty much plug and play. It had been being used previously, but it also had a few little small issues. Maybe not issues, but some things that I dealt with, I guess, once I got it. First off, the power feed on the table over here was missing. There, you could tell where one had been there before, but at some point in its life, I assume it probably quit working and it got taken off, and it was just missing in action. I went ahead and put a new a servo brand auto feed on that axis over there, and that really helps out. I'd really like to have an auto feed on my Z axis on the knee to raise it up and down, because I spend a lot of time cranking on that. It'd be nice to have that. Maybe one of these days I will see about putting one of those there. But I really like the auto feed for doing auto feeding, obviously. Another thing that I did was I put a DRO on this, a digital readout. The digital readout, again, this machine at one point had a DRO on it. In fact, the arm that my DRO is mounted on was still on the machine. There were still mounting holes in the machine where the scales had been mounted on. But again, they were long since gone when I got it, and quite honestly, when the person who owned it before me got it. So I put on a DRO Pro's digital readout. They've got a good website out there online. It's a reasonably priced but yet very high quality digital readout with a lot of good functionality in it. I've been very happy with mine. I bought their kit with the magnetic scales. I put those on the machine, and we had to make them work on this machine. I guess they're all really you have to kind of make them work on the individual machine you're going on in the kit form. But probably spent about maybe a day out here getting that installed. But again, I've been very happy with the digital readout on this machine. And one other thing that I did was, this machine, while I consider it to be overall in pretty good shape, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I mean, there's a little bit of wear in it. It's an older machine. I think this machine was made in the early 1980s. I want to say 1982. I looked the serial number up. But in the early 80s is when this machine was originally built. And I wouldn't say it's seen a hard life, but it's definitely seen a lot of use over the years. And particularly in the middle of the travel, there is a little bit of play in the tables. And I actually had a video that I shot earlier that you can pull up on adjusting the gibs and ways in here, which I actually tightened up a good bit of that and really made this machine much more usable. But still, when I'm doing heavy milling here in the center, and that's the area that usually wears the most because people are mostly working in a very short range, I still got a little bit of play in here. And I may end up going back in there and seeing if I can do some other things to it to fix that. But again, unless I'm doing real heavy milling, it's not an issue on this machine. Just something I have to be aware of, know the limitations of my machine, and if I am going to be doing heavy milling, I just usually have to take a little bit lighter cuts or whatever in those situations. But again, nothing that prevents me from utilizing it whatsoever. Pretty much like with any milling machine, the table setup is pretty much just like anything else. Of course, you have the front guide up here, which moves it in and out from the main column, and then you have the cross slide, which adjusts it in this axis, and you have the knee down here, which raises and lowers everything. So with those three axes, the X, Y, and Z axis, you have pretty good control over being able to adjust it for milling operations or what have you. And of course, it has the standard table locks in here. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that because that's pretty much standard. And of course, we have the auto feed, as I already mentioned. One nice thing that I really like about this machine is it has this one-shot lubricator. So if you reach down here and just push the little pump handle, it will actually shoot oil in this pipe. It's got plumbing in here. It goes to all the different places. So with just doing that every time you're using it, you keep the machine lubed and you don't have to go in here and oil a bunch of different places on the machine. Very nice feature. And then there's the head of the machine, the actual part that's turning your cutters or whatever. Of course, this one uses an R8 spindle system, like most milling machines. I know there are some different size spindles in some of the older machines, but R8s have become pretty much standard. And I think with this Wells Index, you could actually, I can't remember the other bore size or the other spindle size that has an option, but this one has the R8 stuff in it, so you can just put a collet up in here. And mine just has a manual drawbar, which is just this piece up here at the top. It drops in here. There's a set of threads that thread up into the collet and the end of the collet here, and it just pulls it up and tightens it in around your workpiece. So these will hold different size cutters, or you can put a drill chuck up in there, or anything that has an R8 spindle on it, R8 spindles that will fit right up in there. So again, like pretty much any milling machine that's out there, we have a manual quill for drilling operations, or even for light milling. You can use this. To turn it on and off, you just use the switch over here. This is forward and reverse. So again, on the bridge ports, there's usually just a little switch that you turn. I kind of like this little handle that hangs down. It just puts it right there where you can get to it a little bit easier when you're operating the mill. That's just something that's pretty common on the Wells Indexes, and that may be an option on some other mills as well, but I really like that feature. When it's running, you got a brake right here. You just pull this up like such, and that will put tension on a brake shoe inside the head that will stop the spindle from turning if you need to stop it while it's still going when you're working on it. You can also use this, of course, for tightening up the drawbar. When you start getting tight and it's wanting to just spin, even when it's in gear, you can just put some tension on that and allow yourself to tighten it up. This machine is variable speed, so when you're running it, to change the speed, you just pull the handle around into different positions. Right now I've got it running in the low range, and the low range goes from 50 RPMs up to 525 RPMs. To put it into the high range, you just use this little lever right here. The second position up is neutral. You go all the way to the top. This changes the back gears, and let's get it lined up just right. There we go. Whoops. There we go. So now that's got it in the high range. The high range runs from 400 RPMs up to 4,200 RPMs. So right now that's at about 2,400. And that bad noise you're hearing is my drawbar. It's not tightened up on a collar right now, so it's just flopping in there free. When you tighten that up, it doesn't do that. The real question, I guess, that I had, or what some people really wanted to know about, was the auto feed on this mill, and how to use that. I used that recently in one of my videos when I was using a boring head, and some people just want to know how it worked on this Wells Index mill. So we'll go over that. Of course, right now it's the auto feed is disengaged, so you can just use the quill to manually go up and down, and you have a lock here that locks the quill. And of course this piece here, the handle, you can adjust depending on what range you're in, or where you want your handle to be while you're using it there. So that's a real handy feature. When the handle gets back here on the back side, sometimes it's just hard to get pressure on it, so you can adjust that handle up so that you're pulling downward pressure on it when you're feeding. So that's a nice little feature that's pretty standard on most mills. As far as the auto feed goes, there's a couple of levers on here that you really have to do. So first off is this lever over on the side. So to engage the auto feed, what you need to do is move this lever down into the down position, and that will engage it. And of course in the up position, it's disengaged. They recommend on this machine that when you're not using the auto feed, to leave it disengaged, and then just turn it on by pulling this down whenever you need it. Okay, so I have the auto feed engaged. The next thing here is this lever here on the side, and this will allow you to put it into the speeds, and it has 3 different feed rates that you can use on there, and this actually has 5 different notches that you can put it in, 2 of which are neutral and they're marked in there. So the first one that's all the way forward is 1.5, so that's going to be 1.5 thousandths per revolution that the cutter makes. The second notch is a neutral. The third is 3 thousandths, feeding down 3 thousandths per every 1 revolution. The next stop again is a neutral, and then the last one is 6 thousandths per revolution. So you got a range 1.5, 3, and 6 thousandths. Just to make it where we can see it operating a little bit better, I'm going to put it in the 6 thousandths range right now. So now, let's just assume maybe we have a boring bar in here, or we want to have something that we're controlling down to feed. We're just going to go ahead and turn the mill on. Let me put this back down to low range. Alright, now the first thing you'll notice is that the wheel is turning here, but it's not engaged right now. To engage it, what you do is you take this lever on the front, and I need to put a knob back on here. This knob is missing, but when you put that up, you'll hear it click, and now you can see actually the handle coming down. So it's feeding down, and we're in a feed rate of 6 thousandths per inch. And of course, to disengage it, you just push it down. I put a little note on here. I wrote on here with a Sharpie pen, engage up, just to remind me, because I don't use this a lot. Okay, there are also times when you may want to have the feed go up instead of down. So let's just, we'll just put it down here. And what you do is you just pull this little middle knob out, and now when I engage it, the feed is going the opposite direction. Another handy little feature that sometimes people will use is using the hand wheel here to feed rather than the quill itself. This comes in real handy. With the quill, you don't have a lot of control in what's going down. If your drill bit were to grab, it could still pull that down. With this hand wheel, you can do a very controlled feed. It's geared inside the head, and that's again, doing something like drilling where you're punching through the back of a hole and you don't want it to suck that drill bit down. You want to control it. You can hand feed with this, and to do that on this mill, what you do is you put your feed rate into one of the two neutrals, and then engage the head and feed down. So I've got this in neutral right here, and I'm going to engage my head. Notice that it's not turning because the feed is actually in neutral, but when I feed that here, you can see the quill handle again moving down as well as the spindle. So with that feature, you have a lot of control over hand feeding in those situations where you need that. The only other things I'll mention about adjustments on this machine is the head and positioning the head. You got quite a bit of adjustments on that. So you can adjust how far in and out the head is by loosening these screws on here, these bolts on here. This whole head is kind of an turret assembly that is on a dovetail ways, and you can slide this whole head forward and it'll come out probably about another 2 foot from where it's at right now to move that head forward for doing some oddball setups that may come into the shop from time to time. So you can see how far it's sticking out in the back there. And you got that whole amount of movement that will come forward. You can also adjust the head left and right by loosening these bolts right here, and there is a stud right here that you can put a socket on or a wrench on that has a worm gear in it that will actually allow you to feed that head over to the side. So if you need to do some angle drilling, going in at a certain angle, you can use that. The scale on it will get you pretty close, but I always recommend anytime you're doing that to measure your angles with something a little bit more precision to make sure it's right. Additionally, you can adjust what they call the nod of the head, where it will tilt in and out this way, and that's on the other side. So you just loosen these 3 bolts right here, and again you've got this head right here that you can put a socket on or a wrench on, and it has a gear in here that will adjust it in and out. So you have a good bit of adjustments. Makes this head very versatile. And finally here you can also adjust the angle of the head on the column. There's a scale on here, and again you just loosen these bolts up on the top here, and you got a wrench head here that you can use that will actually allow you to rotate this from side to side going around. So you got quite a bit of axes here that you can work with to adjust. You can also see here the dovetail way going out in the back that shows you how far forward you can move this whole head forward. Right now I've got it almost all the way back, which is coming down almost to the center of my table over here. So there you go. That's just a quick tour of my Wells Index Model 847 vertical milling machine. It's a good machine. If you're looking for a milling machine and happen to come across one of these, I would recommend them. Of course, as with purchasing any machine, you want to check it out and just see what kind of life it's had, see what kind of conditions it is in. You don't want to buy a machine that's just totally worn out beyond repair. But there's a lot of these old machines out here that are still got a lot of good life into them. So I would consider this to be a very good, high-quality alternative to a Bridgeport. Again, not putting it above a Bridgeport by any means, but definitely not any worse either. In fact, in a couple of areas, it might just have a slight edge over the Bridgeport, in my opinion. So there you go. Thank you for watching.